guys, thanks for stopping by. Welcome to ASMR. ASMR showcases spine-chilling stories from Reddit. All will be narrated in a soothing ASMR whisper. So let's find a quiet spot, relax, and dive into the world of whispers and chills with these scary stories from Reddit. I'm a 23-year-old female. I'm from Russia, but I grew up in England. Anyway, my family used to go back to Russia during the summer. I think it was 2012 or 2013, so I would have been about 12. We were at my house in Russia for the summer. My siblings, my cousins and I were playing on the street at around 7:30 p.m. It was still pretty light. Me and one of my cousins were the oldest there, so we continued playing outside, just the two of us, when my younger siblings and cousins went inside to bathe and go to bed. At this point, it was around 10 or 11 p.m, but we were still outside. There was a small forest behind my house. Me and my cousin were sure we had been to every inch of that forest, so we decided to go exploring in it. I don't know why, but we did. Around 20 minutes in, and nothing unusual had happened, until we came to a massive clearing in the forest. No trees or plants, except grass, were growing there. We had never seen this part of the forest before. It was strange, because the clearing was huge, and until now, we thought we had been through the entire forest. We had these little torches that surprisingly gave a lot of light. I shined it to a part of the clearing about 300 foot away from us, and when I tell you, we froze. There was a man who looked like he was from the Second World War. He had a tent set up and had a fire going, and he was literally dressed how soldiers were during World War II. We didn't say anything because my dad and uncle had taught us not to in situations like this, but we couldn't move. We just stayed still. The man hadn't seen us, he had his back to us, and all of a sudden just started shouting help. We could see he wasn't in any danger at all. We quickly and quietly ran out of there. We could still see him from far away, still shouting for help, and he looked like he was looking for something. My cousin suggested we help him in case he genuinely needed help, but I could tell he didn't. While we were trying to find the way out of the forest, the shouting stopped, and we lost sight of the man, but we saw a deer, and you could tell from the way it was moving and its eyes that there was no way it wasn't something paranormal. We started running faster, and deers supposedly run away when you make noise, but no, this deer was chasing us. We finally got away and found my house. We told my grandma, who was the only one awake, and she told us to take her there in the morning. The morning came, and at around 7 a.m, we got up and tried to find the clearing. We hit almost everything in that forest, and the clearing was nowhere to be found. It was like it had vanished, and there was no sign of a campfire. Also, there was a sign at the front of the forest that said no wildlife or anything lived in the forest, and that camping was forbidden. In the last 12 years, we have searched that forest, and we have never found the clearing ever again. It's whatever, James mumbled, washing the evening's dishes, scraping away the meal she barely touched. That phrase had become the bane of his existence. He was annoyed whenever she said it, which was often. She was a smart girl, she had a great vocabulary. He'd read to her nightly since she was an infant. Surely she could better articulate her thoughts. She's a teenager, James reminded himself. They're famous for eye rolls and monosyllables. Alison would have known how to handle this. Being a single parent sucked. Help raising a daughter aside, what he really yearned for was commiseration. He would have given anything to share a knowing glance with his wife when their daughter put headphones in at the dinner table, or to have someone squeeze his hand, reminding him she'll grow out of it, when she stomped back upstairs without offering to help clean up. When she was little, he would return from work and she would talk his ear off about anything and everything. A fall she'd taken, a thought she had, explaining a picture she'd drawn of a parrot that looked more like a horse. so she added some chickens. God, he missed those days. Now everything boiled down to, it's whatever. How was school? I don't know. It's whatever. Are you dating anyone? I'm just. It's not. It's whatever. He did what parents swear they'll never do. How could he not? He loved his daughter, and there was essentially a manual to her mind sitting upstairs waiting to divulge answers. So he opened the diary. He flipped to an entry randomly. It was about a concert they'd tried to go to, only to find the tickets James bought were for the night before. He had been so disappointed in himself for letting them down. But Alison had taken blankets out of the trunk and laid them on the hill next to the venue. They'd ordered Chinese and had a picnic to the sounds of the live music. The diary entry ended. Best concert ever. Tears filled his eyes. He went back to the start and read through entry after entry. Good times they'd celebrated together, and hard times they'd gotten through together. The last entry had his name written at the top, as though it were addressed to him. James, if you're reading this, it usually means you've regressed again. I know how hard this is. I had to move on, and I hope that one day you will too. Hannah died, James. I'm so sorry. Please call me, Alison. James fumbled for his phone. All he could do was follow the instructions. Alison's phone was disconnected. Hanging up the phone, he noticed his hands, wrinkled and veiny, riddled with liver spots, an old man's hands. He looked up to see his daughter smiling at him from the doorway. He didn't ask what was going on, how this could be, what this was. He already knew. It's whatever. I'm a 15-year-old female, but back when this happened, I was around 12. I have always been curious. I lived in the middle of nowhere, in a big red and blue house. I never had much friends growing up, and I was very antisocial because I'd undiagnosed autism at the time. Although it was normal for me and my siblings to go outside and take walks. We lived next to a girl who went to my school. I barely knew her. Let's call her Ava. Ava also had a sister, and we will call her Chris. Ava and Chris were outside at the same time as me and my siblings, so naturally, my siblings would hang out with them, and I would tag along, even though I didn't talk much. One day, we all decided to play games together. Now, for this story, you have to understand the layout of where we were playing. We were not far from the house, and we lived under a hill, so if you left the area, you would have to go on a hill. Near the end of the hill, there was a small building, fenced off, and electrical box owned by the government, I would assume. Mind you, nobody is ever here. Across from the building was a river, and to the left of the river there were pure woods. There was also very huge rocks leading to the woods. I think they were boulders, but I don't know. As a kid, they seemed way bigger than they were. Anyway, we started off playing Duck Duck Goose. All was normal till we all decided to play hide and seek. Now, there was a lot of kids, so my brother, who was 8 at the time, was the seeker. Me and Ava were together, while my siblings and her sisters were also divided in pairs. My brother begins counting, and me and Ava are looking for a place to hide. We see one of the giant rocks and decide to hide in front of it. Because it was so huge, my brother wasn't able to see us from the front. We sat on the ground, chuckling, hearing my little brother find everyone. Eventually, we were the last hiders left. We hear my brother a bit farther away from us, so we assume it's pretty safe and we won't get found. We wait there for about 5 minutes until we see it. Something I will never forget. What passed by us looked devilish. It looked mangled up and had patches of skin taken from its fur. It had sharp teeth and grey-brown coloured hair. It had cuts all over its body. It was walking on all fours and turned to look at us. Everything after that is a blur. The thing ran away, and I grabbed Ava's hand and ran. I asked her if she saw it too, and she was equally as terrified as me. We told my siblings and the rest of the kids and ran out of there. I don't live there anymore because I live with my dad, but whenever I come over, we pass that spot. I get the same memories, hoping it won't come after me again. Now that I'm old, I'm going to assume it was a mangled up wolf or coyote, but it looked way I don't know. I'm baffled by this, and I refuse to go near or in the woods anymore. My brother died 6 months ago in a crash. I was the one who identified the body, closed the casket, and scattered the ashes. So when the first letter showed up, handwritten, no return address, I thought it was a sick joke. Don't let Mum drive home on Friday, the brakes will fail. I didn't say anything. Friday came and she crashed 2 blocks from the house. She walked away with a fractured wrist. The mechanic said her brakes had been leaking for weeks. Then came the second letter. You're not sleeping. You need to. The dreams will get worse if you don't. I hadn't told anyone about the dreams, the hallway, the flickering light, the door at the end, and someone standing behind it. More letters followed, always in his handwriting, always predicting things that hadn't happened yet, sometimes saving me. They stopped sounding like warnings and started sounding like instructions. Stop asking questions. You're not ready to remember. This morning I got the last letter. Come to my grave tonight, alone. I'll tell you everything. I went. Didn't know what to expect. Maybe closure or one last hallucination. But when I dug, there was no coffin, just a letter sealed in plastic, same handwriting. You're not the one who survived the crash, Xavier. I stared at the page, reading it again and again, and then I sighed. Guess it was just another dream. I'll probably wake up soon. Last week, I had a horrific experience. It was the middle of the night, and I woke up to footsteps in my apartment. I immediately got up and walked around. I didn't see anyone. I realised that my front door was stupidly unlocked, so of course I lock it, do another check around the apartment, and go back to sleep. Several hours later, I wake up to the same noises, but this time I stay still and listen. The noise stopped, but my bedroom door opens ever so slightly, and I see the black outline of a person. At this point, I'm petrified. I don't move or make a noise, I just wait. Finally, the figure just says 0 in a human voice, and it sounded like any other man. I jump out of bed and turn on all the lights and look around again. Nothing. I double check the locks, and this time lock my bedroom door. I sit in my bed for a while, waiting for something to happen before dozing off. In the morning, I'm still pretty freaked out, but I go to take a shower, and when I turn the water on, the water is hitting the ceiling. The shower head has been turned completely upside down, and I realise the only place I didn't check was behind the shower curtain, and I really don't think that I would have done that. Like, why would I turn the shower head 180 degrees around? It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I go about my day and try not to think about it too much. Fast forward to yesterday. I get in my car in the morning to go to class, and my rearview mirror has also been turned all the way upside down. After that, I'm just so confused and spooked. I wondered if I was sleepwalking and turning things upside down, but I've never been a sleepwalker in my 22 years, and apparently it's very rare for sleepwalking to randomly start in your 20s, almost unheard of. I'm not well versed in the supernatural, so I'm pretty out of my depths. Is there some sort of spirit that turns things upside down, or is it a bad omen or something? In 2021, I found out I was having a son. Obviously the best news I could have ever wished for. I want to tell everyone as soon as possible, but my partner told me not to until after the 12-week scan. On the 11th week, my father suddenly passed away in his sleep. He was 56. I never got to tell him and always wondered, if I did, would it have saved his life? Anyway, my son was born a number of months later, and at night time it got to a routine when he would wake up at 3 a.m. every morning, and I would then go downstairs to make him a bottle and then come back to bed. I did this uncountable times without ever turning the lights on. This one night I did the same thing. from the kitchen into the living room, I suddenly stopped. I could feel something behind me in the corner of the living room. I have never been that scared in my life ever. My blood went cold and I couldn't move. I was petrified in all its sense. I had to run off the spot I was glued to, just to hurry up and shut the door and run upstairs. I didn't sleep that night, and when I was on bottle making again, all the lights went on. I have never felt it since, and only just the other day I was thinking, could it have been my dad coming to help with bottle time? Whatever it is has gone. If it was my dad, did he realise I was scared and left me, or was it something else entirely? There's a doll in my closet, and I don't know what to do with it. I moved with my parents to this small, old farmhouse only a day ago. I can't say I wanted to move here. In fact, I highly protested against it. Going from the big city to a small town of a little under 500 people and one school, it was cliché, but also as much of a drag as you'd figure it was. Annoyed, I agreed to make the most of the move as long as I got the biggest space in the home, the attic. In terms of space and storage, I couldn't have asked for anywhere better. It was like my own mini apartment, large with enough room to have my own little apartment set up. I wasted no time unpacking everything and making myself at home. It was fine until I opened the closet. It wasn't a big closet, just small enough to be inconspicuous, but not big enough for me to fit myself or many of my belongings in there. But I found it had a resident of its own quite quickly. To my surprise, it wasn't dirty or old. In fact, it looked brand new. A little girl with two blonde pigtails and a painted-on smile. She looked brightly up at me and seemed harmless enough that I told myself we would have to get a hold of the previous owners to see if their daughter had lost a toy. But of course, moving is hectic, and by the time I put myself down to bed for the night, I'd all but forgotten about it. Until the scratching started. It was quiet at first, but the louder it became, the more disturbed I was. My first and most logical fear, of course, was rats, but in the darkness of the room, I quietly notated that I could see none of the small buggers around. I'd been sitting up in bed for a full minute when the giggling started. It was low at first, but as I sat petrified, I could hear it becoming louder, more defined. It sounded like a small child, or at least it did at first. The louder it became, the deeper and raspier it did too. I could tell it was coming from the closet. Assuming a faulty door was the culprit, I threw it open groggily. But as I peered inside, I found nothing. No doll, no sign it had ever been there. As the giggling continued, my eyes turned to notice 5 long scratches along the door that sent a shiver down my spine. This morning I tried to tell my parents, tried to make any sense of it, but their answer stumps and terrifies me. Jacob, the attic doesn't have a closet. Tonight I sit on my bed staring at the closet door only I seem to see. As it creaks open and the giggling begins, there's nothing sweet or innocent about it. I'm 36 now, but when I was a kid, I used to get sick a lot, flu-like but with bad nosebleeds. One of those times I will always remember. Laying on the couch, I felt like my head was going to explode. I would hear voices screaming at me, but this one time I remember opening my eyes. The TV was on. It was the middle of the night. As I lay there, I saw a child about my age. We had a formal living room that was 2 steps down from the rest of the house. The child, dressed in overalls, looked over to me from across the room and sat down on the steps. Later, I described the boy to my mum, who then showed me a picture of my late cousin, who had died in a drunk driver accident about 10 years before I was born. After seeing the picture of him, it gave me chills. That was the boy I saw across the room, semi-glowing with the slightest vivid features. I was between 5 and 7 years old, and I've had a few encounters since. This happened a few years ago, and I still can't make sense of it. I don't know if it was exhaustion, alcohol, or something else entirely, but it still unsettles me when I think about it. I was staying at my parents' house in a separate studio space that used to be a garage before they renovated it. It was winter, but the room was heated. I had a little wine earlier in the night, not enough to be drunk, just enough to feel a little tired. It was around 2 a.m, and I was on the phone with my boyfriend at the time, talking about life and trying to clear my head. The room was pitch black, no nightlights, no glow from the street, just total darkness. At some point, I laid down on the carpet while we talked, exhausted. That's when I noticed something beside me on the floor. It looked like a pillow. I couldn't see much, just a dark, soft-looking shape next to me. Without thinking, I rolled over and wrapped my arms around it. Instantly, something was wrong. The best way I can describe it is that the entire atmosphere shifted in a second. The room, which had been warm, suddenly felt colder. Not a draft, not my imagination. The air itself felt different, and this feeling came over me like a wave of deep, heavy sadness. Not my own sadness, something else. It wasn't gradual, it wasn't subtle. It hit me all at once, like flipping a switch. 1 second I was tired but fine. The next it was like something dark had wrapped itself around me, like I had stepped into something I wasn't supposed to touch. I shut up and ran out of the room. My heart was racing. I felt sick, like I had brushed up against something I shouldn't have. The next morning, I went back, tried to make sense of it. There was nothing there. No pillow, no blanket, nothing in that spot at all. I don't know what happened. I don't know if my brain glitched, if I was just too exhausted, or if something else was in the room with me, but I know how it felt, like I had touched something that didn't want to be touched. My brother had just recently passed, and I had begun to isolate myself. My brother and I had experienced many strange, inexplicable things during our time together. On this particular night, I was to have another such experience. I developed horrible insomnia soon after my brother died. I became used to the night. I grew to love it. I had been working on some music one night into the small hours of the morning when I decided to take a break. I sat on my couch and must have instantly fell asleep. I woke up in a fright a little later to my room in total darkness, pitch black. I had been having the weirdest dream just before I awoke. In my dream, I was wearing the exact same clothes, and I was fighting an invisible, invading, and definite hostile force in a room. The only problem was that the room I was fighting in was the room, and it was laid out exactly as I had it. All this ran through my head in an instant. I tried to move when I suddenly realised that I can't move a single muscle. It's not that I'm being stopped or restrained. I can't feel anything. I'm totally paralysed. I have suffered from sleep paralysis before, but not since I was a teenager. Now the panic I was so happy to have forgotten sets in, and I try to move again. I foolishly try to fight it, but I find it's hopeless and I fall further into despair. My mind goes into overdrive, and I then think I can see and feel a presence in this room with me. I can hear muffled whispers and sinister laughter. My dreams start to run through my head when suddenly my light turns on and I can clearly see the silhouette of a man. It looks like a light shadow of a tall, skinny man in a top hat. The shadow gets darker, then my lights go off, and I'm now being forced down onto the couch. My face is being crushed into the upholstery. I can't breathe now. I'm panicking but can't move. Am I gonna die? I think to myself. I'm smothering, it seems, when I suddenly wake up on the couch, back in my original position, with the light on, in total confusion and shock. I go to jump up, but I'm still paralysed. Have I been awake the whole time? Am I still asleep? Have my dreams been actually happening? Eventually, the paralysis lifts and I can move. I lean forward to check the time on my phone. It's 3:45 in the morning. I'm not sure how long these episodes have been going on tonight. I feel completely dazed and more confused than anything. I decided to roll myself a cigarette, and as I reach for my papers across the table, I realise the silhouette is sitting directly across from me. It looks like a very skinny, very tall man, but with no facial features. He's just all black with what I think looks like a top hat. I look into his face and I'm completely frozen. It reaches out its hand to place it on my head. The instant it makes contact with me, I feel my body begin to disintegrate, like as if all the tiniest cells broke away individually, turned to sand, and could no longer form my body. Almost like sand in an egg timer. The shadow rises up, the darkness starts filling the room until everything goes black. I enter a reality completely void of anything, yet I'm completely aware I'm there, although I begin to forget who I am. In this total blackness, I see images of my childhood. My life is like many pages of a comic book, and I see it all over again. I start to believe I'm dying, and I eventually stop resisting what feels like a pull into the abyss. I fall for what I can only describe as an eternity, until I reach an intensely bright light. In this light, I can sense my brother, not him as I knew him, but more like his essence, his soul. Suddenly, I wake up on the floor of my room. It's now after 10 in the morning. I can't believe I've been out for almost 7 hours. Wherever I went, or wherever the Shadow Man sent me, it didn't seem to have what we call time or space. I cannot define whether I dreamt, imagined, or gently experienced everything that happened the night before. All I know now is that we can't explain everything that happens. I spent my entire childhood living in one apartment. It's in a building that used to be a nice storage place where you would buy ice blocks before refrigerators existed. I'm not super sure about deaths before it became an apartment building, but after it did, there have been many. The first encounter I had was when I was about 4. I remember it vividly. My mum put me to bed for a nap, and being a fussy child, I didn't want to sleep, so I just laid in bed angry. While I'm laying there, I hear my mum's voice gently say my name and tell me to come into her room. Thinking I had won and didn't have to nap anymore, I happily walked into her room. When I walked in the door, my mum got mad at me and asked what I was doing out of bed. I told her that she called me in, and she said she didn't and sent me back. Through my childhood, I had little encounters like, every time I was in the main bathroom and everyone was asleep, I would hear someone in heels pacing back and forth in front of the door, and as soon as I opened the door, it stopped. I would also get grabbed or touched randomly when I was alone. Call me crazy, but the touching felt like a man with big rough hands, and it never happened when the lady in the heels was in front of the bathroom door, as if she was protecting me. The aggressive encounters only ever came from the man, never the woman. One encounter I had with the man was I was sitting on my bed, which was on one side of my room, looking at my dresser, which was on the opposite side. I'm sitting completely still when a pair of headphones, the big bulky ones from the 90s, comes literally flying off my dresser and lands at my feet. Another small thing that happened was there was a chair sitting against the wall facing my door. Whenever I would be sitting alone in my room at night, the chair would start creaking as if someone was in it. The biggest encounter I've had so far is this. It was around 1 or 2 a.m. I'm bored and can't sleep, so I'm quietly listening to the radio. I'm looking up at the ceiling when I feel something. I look in front of me, and at the foot of my bed, there is 2 small children holding hands and looking at me. There was a boy around 9 and a girl around 6. They were dressed in Victorian era clothes, just standing there looking at me. I was fully awake and could fully move my body. They were completely white and grey, and when I said hello, they just faded away, and I never saw them again. Now I'm not sure about most of the presences, but the one I'm pretty sure I know who it is the man. In my building, there is a big open space in the middle, and there is 8 main floors. I live on the 8th. I didn't know it at the time, but a man had recently climbed onto the railing in front of my door and jumped to the bottom. I don't know how to explain it, but I just know that's who it is. Call me crazy, I don't care. That concludes today's Scary Reddit stories. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this creepy journey, don't forget to like and subscribe. Please also leave your own spooky experiences below in the comments. Who knows, I could add it to the next video.